Hello everyone, and welcome to Study in the UK, 10 British Phrases You Need to Know. My name is Joey Kirk, and I work for the British Council out of the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. The purpose of this session is to kind of teach you a little bit about studying in the UK and what you really need to know, but also giving you some phrases that you'll likely use and that I use on a very regular basis working within the embassy and speaking with British institutions. I'll just kind of hop right in. We're going to learn 10 phrases throughout the presentation, and I'll be giving you some examples whilst using them, as well as trying to educate you a little bit about the university in the UK. All right, first, you all right? So, you all right is a really common phrase in the UK, similar to how you doing in the US. You all right? So the major, I think the thing that most Americans get a little bit confused about when a Brit asks them if they're all right is how they respond. So when someone says, you all right, you're not supposed to tell them like, oh, it's been an okay day, it was kind of hard. What you're supposed to say back is, yeah, I'm all right, you all right. Just very simple, straightforward, you all right? All right. Like, great. More of a saying hello than it is actually asking how someone is doing. So similar to how you're doing, you're just like, good, thanks, you. Very simple. I'm going to go right into our next phrase, which is brilliant. So this one is one that I find I use quite frequently, and you will probably use frequently as well, especially if you study in the UK. So anything and everything, and anyone can be brilliant. It's the same as saying great. So brilliant. So there are some variations on brilliant. You could say brill, you could shorten it, but brill, thanks. Simple, straightforward. If you want to get to really, really go for it, Brillo pads, just like the scrubbers that you know. Yeah, Brillo pads, awesome. So brill, brilliant, is one that you'll be using quite frequently. I'll also be showing you some photos throughout the presentation. This one that you can see here is of Stonehenge, as you well know, just showing you some of the reasons that the UK is great. And one of them is heritage. So heritage is Great Britain. The one I'll keep on coming back to is the one just behind me. Education is Great Britain. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what we'll be going through today. If you were in my last presentation, you would have heard a lot of this before, but I'll try to answer any questions you might have throughout the presentation. We've already had a few of them come through, so I'll answer them when I think it is appropriate. So right now, all of them will be answered, so don't worry. But the overview of what we'll be doing is just talking about UK institutions, undergraduate degrees in the UK, how one applies, so the admissions procedure, funding, immigration, and then any other questions you might have that I've not answered, and let's just keep it open, honest, so please keep the questions coming in. So institutions, there are over 300 institutions in the UK that offer degree programs, and they really are varied, the types of institutions. The universities, which are similar to universities in the US, they tend to be pretty large, ranging from 5 to 30,000 students. There are university colleges, which are smaller, specific university colleges that tend to have more of a focus and be smaller institutions. There are also very specialist institutions. Many of these are often arts or design focused, so very particular in what they're studying. And then colleges, so further education colleges, which are more vocationally oriented. So often for sometimes art, sometimes mechanics, things like that will be at the further education colleges. But there are over 300 across the UK. There are only 3 private universities in the UK. So it is very much state and government funded in that sense, that there are all public institutions aside from those 3 private institutions. The systems are a little bit different than our own. So England, Wales, and Northern Ireland in primary and secondary school operate on a 13-year system. So their bachelor's degree, their undergraduate degree is only 3 years. Scotland is more similar to the US in the sense of it's a 12-year system plus 4 years into the undergraduate degree. Master degrees are shorter in both, as opposed to 2 years, they are 1 year. All right, well, I am absolutely chuffed to be here with you all today. Chuffed is kind of a form of flattery or excitement, and I am chuffed to have you here listening to me present, and I hopefully will cover what you want, once again, ask questions you might have. But people, when they're blushing, if they're really quite proud or happy, will be absolutely chuffed. Okay, so undergraduate degrees. There are a considerable number of them. I think last count there were over 30,000 different degrees courses offered in the UK. So anything you want to study, you probably can. So they really from acting to zoology, so really from A to Z or A to Z, you can study it all. There are some very specialized programs. Programs are very focused. So depending on what you're studying, you will study only that subject. The undergraduate UK education system is very independent in its scholarship and critical thinking. Students are required to do a lot of research, reading on their own outside of the classroom. So you won't spend as much time in the classroom, where you'll spend a lot of time doing work on your own. Most undergraduate degrees in the UK are honours programs. So when you graduate, you have an honours program, and this would be regardless of what classification of degree you graduate with, you still have an honours program. So when you graduate a UK undergraduate degree, you can graduate with first, which I would say is something similar to a 4.0, 2.1 or a 2.1, which is a second, so kind of the second tier, but in the higher end, or there's also a 2.2, and then there's also a third, and then just a degree. So there's 4 different qualifications. So in the US, where you graduate with a GPA, in the UK you can have a first, second, being 2.1 or 2.2, third, or just an ordinary degree. So in the UK, there are no general education requirements. So whatever you are going in to study, whatever your course, your major is, you will be studying just that. You won't have to worry if you're studying biology about doing English ever again, or vice versa. As I mentioned earlier, program duration does vary. So it is 3 years in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, but it is 4 years in Scotland. When it comes to master's degrees are 1 year. I would say the hard and fast rule, for the most part, is it is a 3-year master's degree in the US, it's a 2-year master's degree in the UK. A prime example of that is a Master of Fine Arts. So a 3-year degree is just 2 years in the UK, and a typical MA or MSc will be a 1-year master's degree. So once again, going 4 to 3 years in the majority of the UK, and 2-year or 3-year masters to 1-year or 2-year masters. All right, let's have a think. Before we move on, let's have a think of where can we find information of where to get these programs, as opposed to saying, let me think about it, or anything like that. In the UK, you say, let me have a think, let's have a think. So together, let's have a think. Where would you find information on the UK? So there's a lot of different options you could really explore here. You could, of course, go to Google and search whatever program you're interested in, but there is a one-stop shop outside from the university-specific websites where you can find this information, and that is the educationuk.org website. We relaunched it about this time last year, so you can find all the information you could possibly need on educationuk.org/USA. This has some very US-centric information, and we'll continue to have more as we upload it. It's a great website which you can find everything from cultural things within the UK of how tipping works to specific degree program offerings. It lists every major at every institution across the United Kingdom. All right, it's a bit wonky. The system itself seems a bit wonky in relation to the US. And by wonky, I mean like a little off, a little different. So wonky is something like a table could be warped, it could be a bit wonky. So with that, the system might seem a little bit wonky, but once you get to know it, you'll be fine. All right, so there are multiple program types. I'm going to focus on undergraduate here, but I'll mention masters as well. So there's a single honors program, which is kind of similar to a one-subject major. So the example here is a bachelor's in human geography, where you'll take solely geography courses, very focused on that one subject. There's interdisciplinary degrees, which are wider, and kind of you explore a wider area, for instance, humanities. There's also combined and joint honors, which would be the UK's equivalent to double major and major minor. These are, I would say, a little bit less common than you'll find a double major at a US institution, just because of the focus required, and a 3-year degree versus a 4-year degree, so you have less time to get it all completed. You can see a double major by the way it's written, biomedicinal chemistry and music, meaning it's a double major, or a major minor uses the word term with, so law with criminology. So you'd focus on law and have more secondarily in criminology. With the biomedicinal chemistry and music example, you'd be doing them both equally. Also, professional degrees are available at the undergraduate level in the UK, and some examples are medicine, dentistry, law, architecture, business, etc. There's a lot of different professional degrees that are available. They can be quite difficult to get into, so don't immediately bank on thinking you could get in no problem. Medicine, most institutions that offer medicinal degrees to international students have no more than 15 placements for the whole international student population applying. They could have thousands of applications applying for those 15. So be very wary, it'd be quite difficult to get into one of those programs. Before moving on, let me just explain these programs just a little bit more. I'll have 2 examples, one being the single honors program, so you can see what it might look like if you're doing single honors in history. That you have contemporary Europe, transformation of Britain, making history, that type of thing. In your second year, you move on to America in the 1960s, Jews, Muslims, and Christians in the Middle Ages, kind of going into this wider history idea. And then as your year 3, you get very focused on what you want to study, and hopefully this will all feed into that last bit over there, which is your dissertation. The dissertation is the most important part of a British undergraduate and postgraduate degree. You are required to submit some sort of dissertation with every degree, and this can really vary depending on what you're studying. If you're doing music, it might be some sort of performance, but in every British degree, you'll be doing some very strong portion of research. So with that, throughout your 3 years, you'll be focusing on this research for your dissertation. And then another type of program to quickly discuss is a co-op or a sandwich program. So what this is, it's similar to a co-op in the US where you actually work during your undergraduate degree. In the UK, it's run slightly differently in the sense that it's, as opposed to making your 3-year degree, it now becomes a 4-year degree, similar to the 4 to 5-year model in the US. So between what would be your 2nd and 3rd years, you actually insert another year, which would be your sandwich year or your work placement. And with that, there's a lot of different things you could do. If you do a work placement, you'll be working full-time. You will most likely be getting paid. The universities kind of help set that up, and you apply to this program directly upon entry into the institution. So you can see, though, that dissertation component is still quite important and quite large when it comes to the sandwich program. All right, so kind of going along with this, these great suggestions, another to kind of explore outside of the cities of the UK, countryside is a really impressive area. As you can see from the photo, countryside is great. They're all over, there's beautiful countryside across the UK, in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. You can find some beautiful views and beautiful beaches. So make sure to check them out whilst you're there. Okay, so next phrase, that's ace or that's rubbish. And what that means is really like saying like that's awesome, so that's ace. Or in Northern Ireland they might say dead on. So when something is really awesome, it's like that's ace, you're bang on correct. Or that's rubbish when you really just disagree and that's terrible, you don't like that, that's rubbish, absolute rubbish. So the using of ace and rubbish as positive and negative. Okay, so beyond the degree. Depending on the club or activity you might find, it could be ace or rubbish, depending on how it's run or if you would do it differently, something like that. Typically, I would say it's pretty ace. So there are different student life and leadership opportunities on every British campus. There's program representatives. You could apply for residential representatives. You could work in the students' union as an option. Every university does have a students' union, and what that is, and we'll have a student life session after this at 1 p.m., which you should check out. The students' union is the students' voice on campus. This is actually run by the students for the students. So the students will actually speak for each other. If you have a problem with the institution, you can go to the student union, and they will help you square it away. There's athletics unions, so there's always different athletics teams on campus. Rugby, football, netball, basketball, they have just about them all. I know of one institution specifically that has a basketball scholarship, but that's pretty rare. And then there's a lot of different societies and clubs. So whatever you really are interested in, you will find in societies and clubs, from wine and cheese society to model boat racing to a lot of ones even have a cappella at this point in a lot of universities. So there are a lot of different societies and clubs you can join. Anything you're interested in, it probably is already there. Then you could also volunteer on campus or within the local community. Every university will have some sort of volunteering opportunity as well. In terms of work and employability, you can also work on campus with your visa or off campus for up to 20 hours a week during term time and full time outside of term. Also, the university will often provide spring and summer work placements if you are interested in staying in the UK over your breaks in the spring and in the summer. So going what's beyond the degree, as you very well know, what's big in the UK is sport. And sport is in fact Great Britain. The Premier League is the world's most watched football league, and you'll find actually is now being played live in the US. So it's spreading throughout the globe really, and even making it over here where soccer has not been such a historically as important. So I'm going to start talking about the admissions procedure now. It's called UCAS. And UCAS is the organization responsible for connecting students to UK higher ed. And they kind of play the part in a certain sense of the Common Application. I would say they're similar to the Common Application and College Board in some senses, where you can find information about all the institutions, like College Board on the UCAS website or the Education UK website, but you also submit the application through UCAS. There's not a standardized test required to enter into a UK degree. The SAT and ACT, some universities will want to see, but there is no specific requirement like there would be in the US. Most institutions are really going to focus on if a student has taken APs, so any AP or advanced placement classes, or an IB curriculum is looked at very, very fondly in the UK. They'll also be looking at your high school transcript to see what classes you've taken, how you've challenged yourself, if you've taken an honors curriculum, that type of thing. So within the UCAS application, you can apply for up to 5 different courses, and this could be at 5 different institutions, multiple at one institution. How you do it is up to you. I would suggest applying to similar courses though. If you're not sure if you want to study music or biology, unless you can make them work in one personal statement, you should really pick one. And the UK itself is really a great fit for students who know exactly what they want to study. If you're unsure, it might not be the best fit, because we don't do, in the UK, there's no liberal arts, it's rare to have a liberal arts type program. Getting back, I just had another question come through about the application process in terms of what you'll submit, and I'll go through this a little bit. But most institutions will ask you to submit SATs or ACTs if you have them, especially if you're coming straight from high school. They will ask that, but they do not weigh as heavily as some of the other things they're looking for, which I'll get to. Transfer students, it's very hard to transfer into a UK undergraduate education, just because it is so focused, unless you're transferring from a very specific program into the same program at a different institution. But even still, it can be very hard. So most often, transfer students actually apply and start over. So if you're in the US and you've done 1 year, it's quite standard just to start over and then finish on time after the 3-year degree. Okay, so when to apply? So on September 1st is actually when applications open. So you can start filling out your application then and start submitting. So that's the first day you can actually submit. The application, opens in June. October 15th is when you have to submit the deadline for medicine, veterinary, and dentistry programs, or Oxford or Cambridge. You cannot apply to both Oxford and Cambridge. You have to choose one. So you can only apply to Oxford or Cambridge, and you have to apply by October 15th. If you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, I would suggest you apply in early September, because with Oxford and Cambridge, a interview is required for them to make an offer. So they will actually interview you. You have to pay for yourself to get there for the interview. Why I say to apply early is because both institutions do interviews in the United States in mid-September. So they do come here, so you wouldn't have to pay for yourself to fly all the way to the UK just for an interview. So I would advise doing that. After that, January 15th is the advisory application deadline. So it's really when you should submit all your applications for every other institution by. So if you don't apply to medicine, veterinary, dentistry, Oxford, or Cambridge, you could apply by January 15th. And with that, you're kind of put into an equal consideration pool with everyone else. After that, you'll actually get reviewed following everyone who's applied before January 15th. For March 24th is when many art and design courses actually require you to apply by. So that's a slightly different process. And it uses something similar to UCAS called QCAS, which you can find on the UCAS website, a link to that. And June 30th is the last date to remember. It's applications after this date. So if you apply after June 30th, if you miss the January 15th deadline, you can still apply up to June 30th and be reviewed when they are ready to review you. After June 30th, you'll be reviewed during something called clearing. I'm not going to explain clearing in detail because it's quite confusing for the average American, but what you should really do is absolutely make sure you apply before June 30th for a autumn start. All right, we're off to our next phrase, which is don't have a strop. So with this is having a strop is kind of whining or like kind of hitting your fist on the table like, oh. So that's kind of being quite stroppy. So don't have a strop. It's okay. It seems different. It seems crazy. It's really not that hard. It's pretty straightforward and actually can be a bit easier than many US applications, and I'll explain now why. So the application has 6 sections to complete, and what I was saying earlier is one application is sent to all institutions. So you have that one application will be sent to up to 5 institutions. So you need to fill out these 6 things, your personal details, so name, address, email, all the things you would imagine to submit in any application. Students' finance, so you wouldn't actually have to do this, so let's knock that one down to 5, being an American student. Choices, so where you want to go, so what courses you're applying to, where. So what this means, if you're going to be applying to biology at University B, biology at University C, biology at University D, but also maybe chemistry at University E. You'd put that all in your choices. Your education, so this is your background. So where you've gone to high school, your SAT or ACT scores, your AP scores, if you've taken an IB curriculum, all of this goes in your education. Employment. This is really key for pre-professional programs that require some sort of employment. For instance, medicine, they want to see that you've shadowed a doctor, something like that you've worked in a ward so you know what you're getting into, that you are competitive. You're not applying because doctors make good money, you're applying because you're passionate about the subject. And finally, your personal statement, and this is really, it can be very important. And what this is, your personal statement is really what you are saying about why you want to study this specific major or course. I want to study chemistry because I've seen this reaction and I've seen it impact real life, and I've been really passionate about chemistry because of such, such, and such. So to be able to say why you want to study it, really focus on academically why you want to study that program. And lastly, a reference is required, and this is something that your school counselor or teacher will do. And what they do is they write about why you're a passionate student, why you'd be a great fit for the UK, and why you should be studying that course. So just to give a little bit more detail about the personal statement, it really gives you a chance to tell universities why they should want you as a student. And every personal statement should be unique. So keep in mind, it's your chance to really sell yourself, to explain that I am passionate about this because of what you've done to arrive there. You should really keep it relevant to academics. So it's a little bit less woolly than a US application, where they want to know why you have studied, why you want to study English, and how you've gotten there. If you're studying English, they don't need to know that, in the side you work as a pharmacist, a pharmacist tech, because that's not relevant to what you want to study. If what you're doing in work is relevant to what you want to study, that's great. If you want to study history and you've been interning at a museum, that's perfect to put in your personal statement, but only put it in if it's relevant. So decision making. So next, the institutions will make one of three decisions. An unconditional offer, which means you're accepted, you're good to go. An unsuccessful, which means you unfortunately were not admitted at this time. Or an unconditional. So unconditional is the kind of middle of the two offers, and it's what most students end up getting. A conditional offer means that you can be accepted if you meet a set of criteria that the university will spell out. This is binding from the university. So if they say you'll be accepted to their English program if you get a 4 on AP English, graduate with a 3.5, and actually have a high school diploma, you're golden. If you get that 4, if you get that 3.5 and that high school diploma, you're set. You are welcome to enter the institution. However, if you find that you get a 3 on AP English, a 3.5, and you graduate, they don't have to accept you into their program. So it's very clear, it's very transparent as to what they're requiring for you to meet the entry criteria. So the onus really is put on the student to kind of get themselves into the institution. So once you've received the final decision from your institutions, you can hold a maximum of 2 offers. So the student then has to respond with one of 3 things. The firm acceptance, so this should be your first choice. So this is maybe the one you got a conditional offer to. You're like, okay, I need a 4 in that AP and a 3.5. So this will be my firm acceptance. If I get that, I am going here, full stop, squared away, done. Your insurance acceptance is somewhere you should be more likely to get in, typically somewhere you've got a conditional offer, an unconditional offer, or somewhere you've got a conditional offer that you know that you will meet. Maybe they just want a high school diploma. Well, you know you're going to graduate, so have that as your insurance acceptance. After that, you have to decline the offer, so it goes back into the pool, can be offered to a different student. Well, we're almost to the end, and I'm absolutely gutted to be leaving you. Gutted being, I feel so bad, I feel really terrible about it, but I'm gutted to leave you. But before I do, I have just a few more things to talk about, and then I'll take some questions. So, just going through the academic requirements, I said I would mention this in more detail of what UK universities are looking for. So, they're looking for, first and foremost, advanced placement scores, or IB. They really prefer them. It gives them a really good idea of who you are as a student. After that, they'll look for dual enrollment, say you've taken classes at community college whilst in high school, or internal honors programs. So if you've taken honors classes within your high school. Then after that, they'll look at your SATs or ACTs, so please feel free to send them. And then finally, the high school diploma. The academic reference is something your counselor or a teacher will write, which talks about the qualities of you as a student, the information about your school. So say they really want an AP, but your school doesn't offer it, that will help explain it. So that's really what your counselor should be doing. And provide context, results, and your chosen classes. So say you didn't do well in biology, and you want to study chemistry, and they're looking at that as to double check that you're quite good at science. If you had a death in the family or something terrible that has happened, that's a good place to actually put it in to help explain to the institutions. And lastly, and very importantly, grade predictions. Grade predictions are what universities really make decisions on. What they'll be looking for is at the end of your senior year, can you say that you've gotten a 3.0 if they really want you to have a B+ in physics. So your teacher will actually put in what you're likely to have. If you're a B student, they should probably put you in a B. But if they think you'll get that B+, put that B+ in there. It should be accurate of what they think you'll do by the end of the year. So someone just asked about this. So how much does it cost to go to school in the UK? with travel costs, housing, and other things like that. So tuition fees are about between £7,000 and £25,000. So this all depends on the institution. The average for an international student is about £15,000, which is about $24,000 per year. But mind you, do remember that this is $24,000 per year, and everywhere in the UK, so England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it is 3 years. 3 years. In Scotland, it's 4 years. So you have to count that into how you're planning financially to support yourself. Living costs, so this would be kind of room and board. What UK Visas and Immigration suggest, and the British Council would suggest as well, is you should have £800 a month for living in the UK. However, if you're living in London or the surrounding London area, you should have about £1,000 per month, just because it is a very expensive city. So between £800 and £1,000 per month. And then depending on how you plan to, if you plan to go home frequently, you would have to plan separately for flights. Booking ahead will save you a lot of money, of course, but you have to really focus on when you want to go home. So ultimately, you have to think about £15,000, what times you'll be in the UK, so between £800 and £1,000 per month, and then you'll be good to go. Most UK universities, it's worth noting, are FAFSA approved, so they can administer federal loans. And what I've been saying, sorry, this has all been in pounds, so £15,000 is about $24,000. £800 per month is about $1,150, so $1,150 per month. £1,000 per month is about 1,500-ish. So it all depends. And the exchange rate, as you know, just changed pretty drastically. But most UK universities are FAFSA approved, and they can administer federal loans. So with that, you can take your Parent Plus loan and different state and federal loans to the UK to help you pay for your education. So when you do this, you have to go onto the fafsa.ed.gov website, go to the federal school code search, and then type in foreign country, and then you'll find all the British universities that are in which you can do federal loan. One question that just came in that's actually relevant to funding is about living on campus. And sorry I didn't mention this, but you can live on campus in the UK, and the residence halls are actually quite nice. With them, you typically you have a flat of, say, 6 or 8 people. You'll be living with British students, maybe an international student or two. You will have your own bedroom, typically, which comes with a desk, a bed, and often your own bathroom within your room, which has, a shower, a toilet, and a sink. The common space that you share with the rest of your flatmates will be a kitchen living space where you can cook if you choose to self-cater. So that's pretty traditional. It's really great. Most university websites will actually have pictures of them, which I would advise checking out. It's a really great experience, and oftentimes some of your best friends in uni will be the ones you meet, who you live with in your first year. At most institutions, those students will then move off campus in their second and third and fourth years and kind of rent a house locally or rent a flat. That's pretty standard and actually not that frightening. People do it together, I swear. It's not that scary. You will not be able to choose your roommates, though. That you will be randomly placed. However, campuses are very easy and walkable, so you will be able to find your friends very simply. And then a few other things about funding. There are only some scholarships available for international students, so please be aware of that. Don't bank on automatically getting a scholarship because it's quite rare. And then international students, as I mentioned, can work part-time. So you can work 20 hours per week while you are in the UK, and full-time outside of term time, which is quite useful. Okay, and then quickly I'm going to talk about visas before we end, and I'll give you time to ask some last-minute questions or some questions I might not have answered. Visas. So to apply for a visa, you need to go to the website listed visaforuk.fco.gov.uk and apply for the Tier 4 student visa. At that point, you then have to pay the visa fee, which is about $477, and then submit it. after you then get your biometrics appointment. So biometrics is your fingerprints, and what you want to do is get them collected and then submit your visa with your application. After paying the fee, and allow 15 days for processing. There are a number of other things you need to submit, and there are some common mistakes, so I'm going to go over them very quickly. So things you need to remember to send: your passport. You cannot send a copy. You have to make sure there's a page free for the visa and that it's valid. So if your passport's expired, you have to get a new one. You need a copy of that online application form. So make sure to submit that in the packet with your passport. You also need a passport-sized photograph of your beautiful face on a white background. You can't have what I have right now with different colors and things. You really just need a white background. Otherwise, you will probably not get your visa. You also need to fill out the appendix form, which you can see the link listed beside me. And then also your CAS number, which is a certificate of acceptance for studies. And what this is the university you've chosen to go to will send you this CAS number, which will help you apply for your visa. What it says is that the university is sponsoring you to come into the UK to study. All right, well, now that you have applied, been accepted to the institution you want to attend to, you're going to the UK. This is the first place you might actually encounter a queue, which as we in the US would call a line. And someone might stand next to you at Heathrow and say, "Oh, nasty queue, innit?" Which is a nice way of saying, well, the line's pretty darn long. So the nasty queue you might run into, you will find out the UK is quite normal to queue. It's pretty standard to stand in line, and the Brits are very organized about it, which is actually a pretty wonderful thing. All right, before I finish, I want to give you my contact information. So my name, once again, is Joey Kirk. I'm the Educational Officer at the British Council, based out of the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. We have a few more questions I'm going to answer before I give you your last phrase and let you all go. So this one comes from a high school student who's asking to plan ahead for the next year before applying to university in the UK. Should they talk to the UK university to see what would be a good fit? I think that's a great idea. Every UK university will have an international officer who is assigned to working with US students. So you go onto the international webpage on the university, look for the American flag, you'll find it, and you look for the person that says USA. You can email them what you're planning to take and what they might think, what they would suggest. Ultimately, what they'll be looking for is something that is relevant, relevant to what you want to study. So what they'll be looking for is, if you're studying English, they want to see great scores in English courses, AP English, a high critical reading score on your SAT, that type of thing. That'll be how they can see their relevant discipline and the qualifications you need to enter. So what they'll be doing at the undergraduate level is looking for that. At the postgraduate level, they'll be looking for a degree. So say you're looking to study poetry. They'll be looking to see a degree in English with poetry at the undergraduate level, and that would be your undergraduate degree applying for a master's. Otherwise, at the high school level, they'll be looking for something very specific, they'll be looking for courses similar to what you want to study in your course. Let me just run through the questions once more to see if I missed anything. After that, the one thing I want to remind you all of where you can find information is to go to the educationuk.org/USA website, listed right here, to really look for information on every institution, so all the majors listed, and to make sure to contact the international officers at the university you're specifically interested in. So every university, regardless of if it's in London, in Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Belfast, Cardiff, wherever, they'll have an international officer. They'll be able to answer all the questions specifically for you about what you're looking for. So really, and getting back to really clarify one of the questions from earlier, what they're looking for at an undergraduate degree, to enter into an undergraduate program, they'll be looking for relevant relevant classes that you've taken in high school. They'll only be looking for a first degree or an undergraduate degree if you're looking to enter a master's. So it really, ultimately, what they're looking for at a high school level is different what they'll be looking for at a master's level, clearly. But note that on most websites, they'll also have a US section, which will say what they're looking for in the American equivalent. Because many times, the American equivalent, it does not translate as easily into the UK. So you want to make sure to contact that international officer so it can be made clear to you. All right, I want to give you the last phrase before I let you go, and hopefully you've, depending on your time zone, eaten lunch. But I want to say cheers and ta. So cheers, you'll hear a lot in the UK, which can be used in a lot of different ways. Cheers is a good way to say thank you to someone. So cheers or ta. If someone holds the door for you, you can just say ta. But ta is another way. They're both ways of saying thank you. And you also can, of course, cheers with a drink, standard, of course. But typically people will say cheers when you hold the door, when you help them out with something. Cheers or ta is quite normal. Well, that is our last phrase. I'm going to run through them really quickly before I let you go. So you all right? All right, brilliant. I'm absolutely chuffed. Okay, let's have a think. It's a bit wonky. That's ace, or that's rubbish. Don't have a strop. Don't get all stroppy on me. I'm absolutely gutted to be leaving you now that you've seen this nasty cue in it. But I just want to say cheers. Thank you all for your paying attention. I really do quite appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and the British Council. And I just want to end by saying that is Great Britain. So please check out educationuk.org/USA. And please go visit the universities that are here today. Thank you.